Hey, what's going on, everybody? What's up, Amp? What's up, youtube.com/@volume snaps, or if you listen on podcast by Googling the Snaps podcast, or, it's in your feed on Spotify, Apple, whatever. Thank you. I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to be solo with you today. T-Bob A-Bear here. That's right. Yes, I know. You may be thinking, T-Bob, is that the old all coaches honorable mention all SEC guy from 2011? That is me. Yes, I know the shadow looms large. But no Aaron Murray today, as Aaron is out, and we were supposed to have Brandon Walker from Unnecessary Roughness make him answer. Well, actually, it was going to be a bit of a tit for tat, and we still will. So I'm excited to get into this. He thinks LSU is one of the most overrated teams in the country. He's also furious in Aaron Murray for his Will Rogers quarterback ranking. So we will get there eventually. But for today, it's going to be me taking you for about 25 minutes. I think this is probably going to be a bit of a shorter show. We sit here on the eve of week 1 of college football, Christmas Eve in so many ways. And it's actually kind of especially exciting though on this Wednesday because honestly, the Thursday, it's ironic. We have a opening weekend of college football where Saturday's the least exciting day, right? Like I will take Florida, Utah, and Minnesota, Nebraska over pretty much anything Saturday. I mean, UNC South Carolina is the only thing that I'm really pumped for on Saturday. And then Sunday we get obviously the just heavyweight Titans match that are LSU and FSU. And we're going to talk LSU FSU today because I feel like they're kind of fascinating cases that you can study in terms of building a team in this modern age, how to take advantage of this modern age. And it's a fascinating matchup just in terms of two fighters that mirror each other in so many different ways and have shown so much growth over the past year. And so we'll talk about that growth, maybe what's going to be different this season. I want to explore this question of will playoff expansion, right? This is the last year in which we're going to have a 4-team playoff. We sit here on the eve of it, and we're pretty excited for week 1. When you expand to 12 teams, does that take away from any of the week 1 hype? You got Ohio State, Georgia, and Alabama all breaking in new quarterbacks this season. I don't know the last time that you had 3 of the top 5 that are going to be having new starters and nobody's really batting an eye. So we'll kind of look at, okay, who do you have the most faith in? And then maybe a little college football at the movies. Also, I want to comment on the Brett Yormark, Steve Sarkisian situation, which I don't think we actually did yet on this show. I don't know how we didn't, or I don't know, man. I sometimes do so much freaking talking about college football that my wires get crossed, and I can't remember where I said one thing or whatever. But we'll get there for fun at the end of the show. Also, maybe since I got it alone, a dash of Ahsoka talk as well at the end. But I do want to start in just kind of a general sense. Week 1 of college football. I'm incredibly excited. I've continued to study Nebraska, Minnesota. I continue to really like Nebraska in this matchup tomorrow. In fact, you look this Colorado, Nebraska. If you win tomorrow, I think you're looking at a 4-0 start for the Huskers. So a truly golden opportunity here for Matt Rule, Nebraska to immediately make waves tomorrow. And, I had a pretty interesting conversation with Chris Dorian this morning, Florida's own Chris Dorian, where we talk about how in the offseason, it's almost like a stock market where teams rise and fall. And sometimes it's not even attached to any bit of news, or sometimes it's a bit of news that's already extrapolated on a bit too much, right? And so, like, for instance, everybody really, 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 really high on LSU. And then kind of this last week, kind of post Mason Smith news, okay, you've had Brandon Walker come out, PFF, Aaron showed a little bit. Like you're seeing some of the national guys kind of take a step back from LSU, say, I'm not so sure that we actually believe in this team. Well, Florida recently seems to have had a bit of the opposite, where whether it's like Aaron mentioned on yesterday's show, an old Utah coach coming out and being like, we didn't use Graham Mertz correctly, or just people watching this Florida program and being like, they're not as bad as you think, or maybe just expectations being too low in general for Florida. I mean, the over-under set at 5.5 wins for a Florida Gator team. That is ridiculous. That's absurd. Like on any given year, Florida should trip and fall into more wins. So there seems to be a level of hype and expectation rising for Florida. I'm also very excited. I don't know how y'all are going to take in week 1, but tomorrow night, be drinking margaritas with the boys. We're going to do a Friday morning snap show. So we'll recap all of the Thursday night action. Aaron's going to bring you a very star-studded Sunday night show, and we'll do a Saturday night show as well. So we got a really big weekend coming up here on Snaps, and I'm just fucking excited to talk about it all. But I'm most excited for LSU Florida State. And it's because it's a literal top 10 matchup of two teams that I believe are legitimately championship relevant. And that's not the only way in which they mirror one another. In fact, the list is kind of astounding, right? Both have Heisman candidate quarterbacks. Both have top 10 wide receiver rooms in the entire country. Both have top 10 offensive lines in the entire country. Both have top 10 defensive lines in the entire country. Like, it's kind of crazy. You go top to bottom and you just see a lot of good on good, but maybe this is where the biggest weakness lies for LSU, and that would be in the secondary. In that, sure, there's always a possibility that somebody in the LSU secondary could step up, but the Florida State receivers that we've talked about so much, the trio of Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, and Winston Wright Jr., them going against this LSU secondary, which are made up of names that you may or may not recognize, right? Like Deuce Chestnut was an all-ACC performer that's had a lot of success against Florida State when he was at Syracuse. You might know him, but you don't know LSU freshman Ashton Stamps. You may have heard of Denver Harris, but he doesn't seem to be in the too deep, right? The former 5-star out of A&M. It's Zy Alexander. You've never heard of him. He's a transfer from Southeastern. It's like, to me, that's the biggest question mark in this game. Can that LSU secondary keep pace with what I think is a top 5 collection of weapons, right? I'm going to extend just beyond the 3 receivers, and I'm going to send it to Jaheim Bell. So it is Travis Benson, the running back, who PFF has as their top-rated NFL running back prospect. Can the secondary manage to keep pace with those weapons? And if they cannot, which I don't think they're going to shut them down, obviously, right? Like, you're going to have to score points to win this game. Then the question is, can Jaden Daniels and this LSU offense overcome what looks to be a very good secondary out of Florida State? In fact, thought to be a top 10 secondary in the entire country, getting a top 10 cornerback in the entire country from Virginia. Oh man, I forgot his name, but that's the fact that he's a transfer, the fact that Deuce Chestnut's a transfer, Alexander's a transfer, the fact that Keon Coleman's a transfer, Winston Wright Jr. is a transfer. That's one of the things I wanted to highlight, right? So we talk about these two teams mirroring each other. They both got quarterback, both have high expectations to win their conference, compete for championships. Both are really good on the lines, both are really good, really all over the field. Both teams have 20 transfers in the 2 deep. So when we look, so that's about 44 jobs, right? So out of 44 jobs, both teams have 20 players that transferred in that factor in either starters or the 2 deep. And that's kind of a fascinating case study for how quickly you can build a contender in this modern age of college football. I mean, Brian Kelly took over a team with 39 scholarship players. Mike Norvell took over a Florida State program that was absolutely in the dumps. And what's interesting is you realize he didn't really get it going until the transfer portal rules started being allowed in NIL, until he could get some of those resources that people were willing to invest in, until he could bring some athletes who maybe at a time would have gone to Florida State, didn't for whatever reason, until he proved himself a bit last year. And now he too has built very shrewdly through the portal. I mean, like, okay, LSU, biggest question mark entering the offseason, who's going to play middle linebacker? You had nobody. Who do you go get? You go get an all Pac-12 performer off a 10-3 Oregon State team, Omar Spates. Their beast mode middle linebacker. He now plays for the Tigers. Florida State's weaker receiver. Who do they get? They get Michigan State's best receiver in Keon Coleman. Like I said, a top 10 corner in the country from Virginia. So all over the field, you're going to see guys that were elsewhere that are now here. Because why? Because they believe in the vision that the head coach is selling them, a vision of a championship. And maybe from the LSU perspective, that's what worries me more than anything. I want to zoom in on Jared Verse, a transfer in his own right, a guy that came from Albany last year. Didn't know a ton about him at the beginning of the year. Knew a ton about him by the end, as this is a cat who's a top 20 NFL prospect last offseason. He chooses to come back. Why does a top 20 NFL prospect choose to come back? Generally, if you're a first rounder, you gone, and it makes financial sense to be gone. Now, you could give me the edge case scenarios that, okay, if you're top 20, maybe you push into top 5. That's a pretty significant monetary difference. And I can buy that. I can buy that as a factor in why Jared Verse doesn't come or comes back. I don't buy it as the main factor or the main reason, right? I think Jared Verse comes back because Mike Norvell has him believing. I think Jared Verse comes back because he was a part of a Florida State team that he saw start 3-3, but finish 10-3 and finish damn strong while doing so. And he's a chance now to go from Albany to now compete for ACC championships, maybe compete for a playoff spot, maybe compete for a national championship. Jared Verse came back because he wants to win, and that's what everybody did at Florida State. So that's why they seem extra dangerous to me. It's not just that they have the talent. It's not just that they have the 5th most returning production in the entire country. It's that all that returning production, a lot of those guys are coming back simply because they think this is their chance to win a championship. Like you look at LSU, they had a guy, Mekhi Gardner last year, starting corner, played very well, left for the NFL, just wanted to be done with college, right? Well, he just got cut, not on an NFL team. LSU could sorely use him last year. Almost no one did that from Florida State this last offseason. So both of these teams entering this game believe they're championship worthy. And as we've talked about, one of them will emerge as a loser. And that means one of them will emerge with their playoff dash hope. And one of them will emerge with their kind of illusions shattered. And it's those stakes that make this so incredible. And it's those stakes that make this game so unique and that we may never really see this again in terms of so much being on the line. In a 12-team playoff, if you lose week 1, that is not a death sentence. This year, though, it is for these teams, or at least for their ultimate national championship goals. Maybe not mathematically, but functionally it will end up being so. And so enjoy what you're going to witness Sunday night, because it's going to be something that you, like I said, it's going to be maybe never seen again in terms of what's on the line for each team. I think it's also going to be a far cry from last year. Again, if we go back to the theme of these two teams mirroring each other last year, what's also kind of fascinating about this, we were interested in this game because it was the biggest brands, but it's easy to forget that, like, we thought these teams were shit. And they looked like shit. LSU looked awful. 2 muff punts, 2 blocked field goals, unexciting offense. Florida State looked really good in some areas, right? D-line getting after it. Offense came out the gates firing all cylinders, 9-10 on third down first half, but then the offense was completely silent in the second half with a chance to close out the game and go up 14. They run a toss sweep on the 1 and they fucking fumble and give LSU the only long odds that they had to even set up the extra point that would have forced overtime that later got blocked. Like, both teams were thought to be shit and both teams looked like shit. But what did both teams do? They continued to chip away, continue to figure this jumps out, and they got better and better and better as the year went on. And now they enter this year. And it's like when you go away for I guess this doesn't exist anymore because social media, so you like see what your friends look like during the summer. But you always remember like going away for like 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, and you come back from summer and you're like, who got hot? Basically, right? Wow, when did he get abs? Geez, his arms are big now. Thank you. Fintrell Cypress. I just saw this note. Fintrell Cypress is the corner from Virginia. Thank you, PG. Or like, oh man, look, she, has boobs now or whatever. You know how it is. Like, it happens. Like, somebody leaves, they come back, they're hot all of a sudden. Everyone's like, they're talking to town. Well, that's essentially LSU and FSU. Both little skinny boys last year in a bit of a noodle slap fight. We watched it because we knew where their dads were. Well, guess what? This offseason, they hit the weight room. They did the abs. They ate the egg whites, the raw protein, and now they enter this game as 2 muscled up, oil up bodybuilders ready to trade blows, 2 true heavyweights ready to go at one another. And I want to be clear, I don't know who wins this game. I really do not. It's and it's such it makes me feel insecure because it makes me feel bad at my job. I should have some sort of strong take here. This game feels so even on paper. It feels like a coin flip. Maybe slight edge to LSU, but then am I a homer? I don't know. Like, maybe so, right? I also have to try to be cognizant of my own bias here. And sometimes when you're cognizant of your bias, then it creates a different bias and you try to fight against your bias. So I'm a little in my head about this game. I would say if I wanted to craft an argument for LSU, I would say this. Last year when LSU played, Will Campbell graded out a 46 this game. That ain't going to happen this year. He was a true freshman starting left tackle in this game last year. He got dominant as the year went on. He's been great during the spring and summer and the fall camp. He's going to be a wholly new player. And that's kind of in keeping with the rest of the LSU offensive line. Just vastly, I mean, it's pretty much an entirely different line than you saw last year and way better. If I wanted to make the argument for Florida State, it's that, well, like I said, your strengths match up with their weaknesses in terms of receivers against those DBs. If I wanted to flip it back to LSU, I'll say, okay, well, Harold Perkins didn't even play in this game last year, right? And Harold Perkins would go on to be one of the best players in the country. ESPN just named him as the fourth best player in the country. He only played special teams in this game last year. Okay. We want to flip it back to Florida State. Okay, well, you no longer have Mason Smith. And all of a sudden, you don't feel great about your edge rushers, LSU. You don't have Mason Smith in the middle. We have a top 10 offensive line in the entire country. You have a weak secondary. Again, we're going to roll you. And our special teams are better because your special teams were a disaster last year. So, like, I could sit here and go tit for tat for arguments all day long. And so maybe, like, as we zoom in, like, maybe by Saturday, Sunday, I'll have, like, a more firm prediction. But right now, I really just wanted to take this time to celebrate what looks to be, in a week full of week one shit, just a golden gem of a heavyweight bout that should be more par for the course in week one, hopefully going forward in the future, than it is. That kind of brings me to one of the second things I want to talk about today, which is, like, will playoff expansion de-hype week one? And you may say, well, yes, T-Bob, you just talked about this, right? You said we'll never see a game like this again. That is true. But I think that week one ends up better in the era of playoff expansion because these coaches are risk averse. And that's how you wind up with week ones like today, because coaches are scared and they don't want to risk their team not being ready for the opening game of the season, going against a good opponent and losing and having all their goals kind of tossed to the side, right? What are they? No bigger improvement from week one to week two. Well, what that led to is, hey, let's schedule a cupcake and then we'll be ready for week two. I mean, Florida State, even against Duquesne last year, did not look like the Florida State that you saw a week later against LSU. So there's some merit there. But the point is, as TVs continue to take over college football, and I'm not saying that like with any negativity in mind, I just mean that more as a statement of fact. But as television ratings continue to kind of shape college football, well, okay, you now got a 12-team playoff. You now got room for 2 losses, maybe 3. Be interested to see how this thing ends up shaking out when we get into the nitty-gritty of it. So, you have to be willing to engage in risk to put the best product on the field. So here's to hoping that in the future, instead of a de-hyped week one, we get an ultra hyped week one, because we have LSU, USC, Ohio State, like Oregon, Georgia, Florida State, whatever you want to say. You can play this game all day. Georgia Clemson feels like that's been played a while. It's excellent. So a great representation going to the field Sunday night of what kind of the new age of college football can be, where if you want to fix it and you're at one of these schools like an LSU or Florida State where you have these inherent powers, you can. Something else to discuss real quickly here. Ohio State, UGA, and Alabama. Well, Alabama hasn't named their starting quarterback yet, but we know Kyle McCord for Ohio State. We know Carson Beck for UGA, and we'll see for Alabama. It was Milroe getting steam. Maybe it's bouncing back to Buckner. I don't know. I still think Milroe, but we'll see. But I can't remember a time in which you had 3 of the top 5 teams in the entire country that had new starting quarterbacks like this on the eve of the season. So on the eve of the season, I think the question becomes, who do you have the most faith in? And this becomes complicated. Off the bat, I'm going to scratch off Alabama. And it's not to say that their quarterback can't be good or won't be good. It's more to say that I think that their team's success will be less impacted by the quarterback position than these other schools. Also, working in a new coordinator, losing a Bryce Young and going to a new guy, and then having 3 guys that frankly aren't that excited. Like, at least Kyle McCord and Carson Beck were kind of always penciled in as the starters, and it just had to be made official. It's a true quarterback competition in Alabama. So the reasons are clear. Alabama, we cannot have the most faith in you at this point. You step to the side. So now we're down to UJ and Ohio State, Carson Beck, Kyle McCord. And this is where we'll probably end up picking Aaron's brain on this as well a bit later on, maybe tomorrow's show, because on one hand, I've got Carson Beck, who Aaron has told me is a, sneaky Heisman candidate, a guy who has bided his time, a guy who should not miss a beat, filling in the very large shoes of the minute Stetson Bennett. And he's combined with a coach in Mike Bobo that Aaron swears up and down is going to be ready to go, but I don't know that I have that same belief. Now, I think he'll put up numbers, but what's he going to do in the big moments? I'm not sure. And if we're just talking about putting up numbers, well, shit. I know Kyle McCord's going to put up numbers. It's one of my favorite exercises to do. You go look at Ohio State quarterback numbers and you look at the time from when Ryan Day arrived. And we're looking at, so he showed up. So the year before Ryan Day got there was JT Barrett's junior year. He throws for 24 touchdowns, 7 picks, which, by the way, doesn't that sound crazy? It sounds like nothing now. And we were all like, what the fuck, JT Barrett? These numbers are crazy. So then Day gets her 17. That immediately goes from 24-7 to 35 touchdowns to 9 picks for Barrett's senior year. Then we get to Dwayne Haskins, 50 touchdowns, 8 picks. Then we get to Justin Fields, 41 touchdowns, 3 picks. Fields again in just 8 games, 22-6 in 2020. Then in 21, you get to CJ Stroud, 44 touchdowns, 6 picks. CJ Stroud next year, 41 touchdowns, 6. So I guess you understand the point, right? Like, I don't know if Kyle McCord is going to be the guy in the biggest moments. I don't think Ohio State beats Michigan. Hell, I don't even know that I think Ohio State beats Notre Dame in South Bend. But I do know Kyle McCord's going to throw for 40-something touchdowns. And look, I expect Carson Beck to have magnificent statistical success as well because they have excellent weapons and the reasons Aaron said, and they have a shit schedule, right? So he's going to stack numbers. But at the end of the day, I just don't see, when you look at the consistency of the Ohio State production, and you look at the fact that the coaching staff remains the same compared to Alabama, compared to Georgia, I don't see how you arrive at any other answer than Kyle McCord. Like, out of those 3 quarterback situations, you have to feel best about the one in Columbus. So that's my answer. Ohio State's breaking in. Ohio State, UJ, Alabama, all breaking in new guys. I'm rolling with the Buckeyes. One note that I saw here today that I don't know if this is especially interesting, but like, it's one of those things where at first I was like, oh, fuck yeah. And then I thought about it for a second. I'm like, I don't actually, I don't know. And that's college football at the movies. Apparently this happened last year, but I missed it. But now it's expanding greatly. ESPN and the Theater Sports Network have announced a new partnership where something like 70-something college football games are going to be shown in theaters, including all New Year's 6 games, college football playoff semifinals, and the national championship. In fact, I believe this Sunday's LSU FSU game will as well. So where I think this gets interesting is, you know me, if you listen to the show, I fucking love the movie theaters. TV's cool. You can have the nicest TV in the world. It will not hold a candle to a nice theater experience. I love walking in and my senses immediately, like those old Looney Tunes cartoons where there's like a good smell wafting through the air and it hooks the character by the nose and they float over. That's me with fucking buttered popcorn. Buttered popcorn and a medium Coke Icy in a nice, cool theater as I escape to some fantasy world or sci-fi or some emotionally heartbreaking. Like, that is my happiest of happy places on planet Earth. That said, so when I first heard this, I'm like, oh yeah, fuck yeah, dude, college football, I'm in. But then I actually thought about it. I'm like, well, am I in? It would be cool to see on the big screen, but like, so much of the CFP experience is social. And well, I don't think that it would follow typical theater rules. Like, I'm sure that people will be talking and hanging out. It's not like a bar. Like, I don't know that you're ever going to be at a bar. So I will try it out to try to get a boots on the ground sort of research here, but I don't know, as much as I kind of liked it off the jump, I don't know that I end up really thinking that college football in the movie theaters makes a ton of sense. But if you've done it, let me know. You get the YouTube comments. Oh, in fact, I forgot to read our comment of the day. Shout out Jimmy Cranford. And by the way, guys, the comments are so nice. Like, A lot of them like, man, I love the show, the humor, sports. So thank you for that. We don't thank you enough. And I should get more involved in responding to all YouTube comments. So thank you. Because also when you comment, you drive the algorithm and please the gods that, kind of rule this show. YouTube.com/@volume snaps. Jimmy Cranford, 2715 says, when two idioms, sayings, or colloquialisms are mashed together unintentionally, the result is what's called a malaphor. Quote, bone to grind is my new favorite malaphor. Oh my God, Jimmy, I can't even tell you how much I love this. First off, yes, I too was laughed when I combined bone to pick and axe to grind. And it's kind of funny because it mean the same thing, right? So it works. I've also, I'm a father of 3 small children, so I've listened to a lot of Jack and the Beanstalk. I may have been thinking about grinding bones for bread, but what I really love about this, Jimmy, is I fucking love vocabulary. Love it. Does it make me sound pretentious? Yes, but I don't give a fuck. Okay. Ever since I was getting ready for the SAT in high school, and I'm doing these vocab tests every week, there's just something about a word that has some deeper meaning that it just fucking gets me going. And why I'm going on this preamble, Jimmy, is because I had never heard of the word malaphor. Like, you hear colloquialism. How could you not love it? It's mellifluous. Mellifluous is mellifluous. It flows on the tongue. I had never heard the word malaphor. So I thank you, Jimmy Cranford. You taught me something new today. And I too now will be on the lookout for malaphors. And guess what? I too now will add bone to grind in my malaphoric lexicon. So thank you, Jimmy. Very great comment. Anything else to get to today? Last thing here. Brett Yormark took the shot at Texas the Texas Tech banquet. If you haven't heard it, he basically said, oh, look, coach, I'm going to be at Austin at whatever date, and I expect you to take care of business like you did last year. And all the Red Raiders fans are going crazy because they're at a Texas Tech function. Some people are getting like, and look, then Sark comes out and he's like, we just said a mean about sportsmanship, but I guess he doesn't. He's like, embrace it. Okay. Shut the fuck up.
Did you see the Dana Holgerson comment?
Whoa, Jesus, Brum. I literally just what the? Whoa, dude. I have.
Couldn't help myself.
I have goosebumps. Like, that actually scared me. Okay. Kool-Aid man just popping it out of the wall. No. What did Dana Holgerson say?
When we pull this up, it's incredible. Basically, he said, we don't want them. They don't want to be here. We don't want them here either. It's this like weird Texas Big 12 war that seems to be.
No, but see, okay, but that's my fucking point. It's not weird. Thank you, Holgerson. Like, let's all just call. That's why because
like, you appreciate my gun decision on this. Like, fuck you, everyone who's leaving.
Yes, because why wouldn't any of us have it? They fucking tried to stab you in the back. They almost killed you. They almost killed the Big 12 as a conference. How many teams out there would be floating around like Oregon State and Stanford and Cal are right now? Just fucked because of what Texas and Oklahoma did.
That conference.
That's what I'm saying. And whether you want to say it's luck or Yormark skill, whatever. The point is, Texas and Oklahoma are the ones who started the events that had the Big 12 bleeding out on the ground and seemingly dead. Now, credit Yormark and company for finding a way to make it through. But, like, why do we have to act like it didn't happen? What? No, they tried to fuck you. You want me to be nice to the person that tried to fuck me? They tried to fuck me professionally. And I'm supposed to be nice to them professionally? Why? Like, just call a spade a spade. If you are one of the, and there's some really respected writers and thinkers out there that I think are like, well, Yormark as a conference commissioner should be above it. Fuck that. No, he should not. Or even if, you know what, even if you want to say for his professionalism, he should. I'm just saying as an adult male, he should not. Okay. Or not male, just an adult. You should not. Like, I don't need to show respect necessarily to those who disrespect me. So I think Brett Yormark was well within his rights. And yes, it is like a situation where like a couple breaks up, but they still got a lease and they got to continue to live together, and it's awkward as hell and everybody wants it in, but you just can't end it. But hey, look, thank you to everyone for joining us today's episode. I know it's a bit meandering, a bit all over the place. We had to kind of cobble together a last second show here as I was expecting. I had a whole interview ready to go with B Walker, but we'll get that done. We'll get him in. Aaron will be back tomorrow. Like I said, we're going to record on Friday to recap all the Thursday night games. We got a Saturday night show. I'm not going to be in the Sunday night show, but Aaron and a couple of really special guests are. So I definitely recommend checking that out after LSU, FSU. The bottom line is when it comes to week 1 of college football, you want to be here with us on Snaps. It's going to be so much fun. Thank you to Amp. Google Snaps Podcast, rate it, review it, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, wherever. Please, please, please. Thank you. The road to 3K on YouTube continues. So continue to send it to your friends and tell them to sub to the channel, youtube.com/@volume snaps. And I'll be doing a better job going through your comments. Huge thank you to Ryan Brumley, Pat Gunther, Danny Carnes, Adam Gracia, Chris Tran. Huge thank you to Papa Colin and the Volume. Biggest of all, thank you to you, the listeners. And thank you to Tecovas. Check these things out, dude. We don't have an official ad read for them today, but they sent me some boots, and these things, bruh, have changed my life. I'm just walking. They're handmade. It's the best smelling leather I've ever had. I'm just walking around all fat and cocky. I'm a boot guy now. Makes you taller. Makes you feel more confident. So shout out to Kovas, man. Hooking the boys up. And, well, look, I hope you all have an excellent day, and we'll see you tomorrow for a brand new episode of Snaps.